Honestly, I don't mean to be like Nike, but honestly, just do it. Like, like literally.
Real.
Honestly, I often feel a very heightened sense of imposter syndrome. So I literally fake it until I can make it.
Hello, and welcome to Conversations for a Feminist Future. Today, for this episode, I'm joined by Jenny and Suliya as we talk about the power of connections and how a powerful network can change everything. Today, having a powerful network isn't a nice to have, it's actually essential. Whether you want to grow your career, develop your leadership, having a strong, value-aligned network can be a powerful tool to help you grow. Let's hear from Suliya and Jenny how they develop their networks, and I request you to share any tips and tricks you have for our listeners.
So my name is Suliya. I live in Toronto, obviously. I'm ethnically Nigerian, and I am currently summering at a law firm downtown. And I believe I'm like the fifth Fora cohort, so I'm a bit aged. But yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Amazing. My name is Jenny. I describe myself as a multi-hyphenate. I'm a doer of many things. I find myself in many spaces. In Fora's context, I work in communications and marketing, but in many of my lives, I work also as a photographer, videographer, an entrepreneur, a writer, a creative. I am so excited for this conversation because networking, actually not networking, but my network is truly how I've landed in so many of the incredible experiences that I've had the opportunity to have. So yeah, excited to be here.
Jenny, just how you mentioned that your networks have helped you land in a lot of like places, I want to start by talking about how does one build a network. Suliya, as an early career professional, let's start with you about how did you start building your network as somebody who's in university, as a Rise on Board program alumni? Can you talk more about your network and how did you begin that?
Yeah, I think with networking and just like talking to people in general, like there's the awkwardness of initiating a conversation, but I have no shame. If I see somebody I like on LinkedIn, I will message them. I feel like in my head, the worst thing someone can say is no or not respond, and I move on and message somebody else. So I think getting over the fear of like rejection when trying to connect with somebody or someone that you would like to maybe work with or just connect with in general is the first step. And then after that, it's pretty much smooth sailing. I like to be prepared. So if I'm interested in somebody, kind of do my background on them a little bit more so that I have questions to ask. But honestly, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, I am very shameless when it comes to DMing people that I like and I admire and I'd like to get close to. So
And just how you mentioned, Suliya, I think building a network is not, it definitely sometimes happens organically, but it's also something that you have to intentionally put work into. And it's a very conscious choice to like send somebody a LinkedIn request, a connection request, or even at a fundraising, like any event, to go and talk to someone. Jenny, as somebody who's been who's a professional and who's been in the sector, in the workspace for some time. Can you talk about how do you build those long-term, intentional, nurturing relationships and networks?
Yeah. So it's really funny that you say that in terms of connecting with people online and doing that really shamelessly at like events and stuff like that. I was always, and honestly to this day, still so uncomfortable in any networking kind of event. I feel like when you know that that's the goal, I get like in my body the ick, because I'm like I just don't want to meet you just to get somewhere further in life. I want to meet you and talk to you because you're a cool person. So one of the things that I didn't realize was so powerful in how I ended up building my network was every single time I would enter into a space, every single time I would have a conversation with a person, for the most part, I didn't know who they were. I didn't know what their roles were. I didn't know why they were like well known. I didn't know like I didn't know who the influencers were in a room. I didn't know who the higher levels were in a room. I would just go and have these conversations with people when I entered into spaces, being like, you've got cool energy. Like, what lights you up? Why are you so cool? Because I can tell you're cool. Hi, like, my name is Jenny, and I would love to get to know you because you seem like you're really interested in the stuff that lights you up. And talk to me, tell me about yourself. And so when you have conversations that look and sound and feel like that, you start to see people as people, and people start to realize that you are seeing them as a person and you're not seeing them as a means to an end for your own self-preservation. And like that intention in like going into spaces and having conversations like means that you can also like really build that sense of community outside of like what that like word networking can like sound like. So for me, like that's the way that I've approached network. And like now it's really cool because I'm actually like in some ways like really protective of my network because I have such incredible people in my network that are doing such incredible things. And I also have the privilege of calling them my friends, and they only got to be my friends or people that I'm like really in like kinship and community with because it wasn't about what they could do for me. And it wasn't about like who they were or how up they were in like whatever position or, you know, whatever social status, but actually just like, hey, like, also I see you're struggling. Like, can I help you with, like, can I support you? Like, you seem anxious in this room. Let's have a conversation. So that has been my approach. And I feel like that is, like, that approach for me has been true to who I am. And anytime anyone is, like, true to who they are and how they approach conversations, I feel like it is such a huge component to being also received.
Yeah, no, that's actually very insightful. I think, for me, being in law school and going through the politics of what it means to just occupy that space, and they shove networking down your throat. And honestly, growing up, similar to Jenny, I never really had to network. Most of the people that I've been in community with or have grown my network with have been as a result of a shared struggle or a shared passion for something, or a shared need to dismantle some sort of structure. And we've all gone on to do amazing things. And I just find that, as Jenny said, I think the more intentional and the more true you are to just building community, you kind of just find yourself surrounded by people that maybe not look like you particularly, but have the same passion as you. And so it's weird being in the law school space because that intentionality is taken out of it, because honestly, you're here to network with people that can literally help you get on Bay Street. That's it. Like there's no intentionality component to that. And so it's hard being in that space, and you don't want to be too big, but they make it seem as if your career or who you are as a person is dependent on who you're around in that particular space. And so sometimes just honing back in on the intentionality part and then like not taking it too seriously, I find ends up allowing me to gravitate towards people that feel the same way.
You know what's so interesting about like what you say in that though is like spaces like that, the networking environments have always been about it being a boys club, and like, to be quite frank, like a white boys club.
Yeah.
Like, because the actual comfortable networking events where you can be yourself are really like the golf course. You know, they're really like beers and drinks after work.
Yeah.
And like that is not conducive to the kind of like to folks that look like you, who look like me, who look like us. Like it's not conducive to actually who like are in that field in like today's day and age. It's not supportive to like all of the different lived experiences that people come from. And so when you don't have opportunities where you can still have that like honest candor in networking, then you miss out on that. And then you end up in these like really forced environments where you also still aren't showing up as your real selves. Whereas like those who are more privileged to be in those spaces or accepted in those spaces can still, I guess, like show up as themselves.
Yeah. As I think about this, I think for men, networking has always been like, I think networking has a gendered lens to it, right? When we talk about networking, what you were taught in law school, it's about advancing your career. How do you like leverage this person to move to the next step? And that's a very like a boys club understanding of networking. But as a feminist or as a woman, we talk about community, like coming together, building upon, like building with each other. And I think as women, we don't intrinsically try and leverage those connections, but we try and support each other in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can one of you share how did your network or community help you with your career or in your leadership journey?
Yeah, I think for me, like, honestly, I hate being in law school, but I love the law. It's a weird thing. I don't want to get on it. But like, I think my network is so important to me because as a Black Muslim woman, I'm like maybe like 5 or 10 in my cohort. And like, I need my network to be able to tell me that, yes, I deserve to be there. To look over my resume when I'm hyper fixated on, should I add the fact that I'm Black and Muslim? Like, is that being too much, or is that enough? Exactly back to what you were saying, Jenny. I think it's really important to be able to go beyond just what people can provide for you and focus more on like the type of community you want to be a part of, and the collective harmony that you bring towards each other, and just the ability to be seen, I think is important. And so when I think of my network, it's hard because I'm in this corporate space and I'm trying to create connections with other people, but it also comes at a tax. The tax is like, how much of myself am I able to show at the beginning? How much should I conceal? The respectability politics. Because the reality is in the type of field that I'm in, like there is a respectability politics. And depending on how much you subscribe to that, you kind of have to curate your personality in a sense to maybe subscribe, maybe not, maybe leave some things out, maybe carry some things. I don't know. So it's a weird place to be. But I think at the core of it, having a group of people, be it community, be it in your network, be it family, that really understand and see you for who you are, helps navigate all the extra.
I truly mean it when I say, like, I would not be in the career position I am now without my network. I was 24, and I had just moved to the city of Toronto. I knew no one. I was just leaving a startup that I was a part of. I like had my business, but I didn't have community. I didn't have anyone here in the city. And I remember just knowing, like, I don't have a job. I have like a camera and like a passion, and I just need to show up. And I started showing up at like these events and just really just being like, I can volunteer my photography, or like I can do this. Like, let me just be here in these like community events, and talking to people. And I remember like in one space, I was like photographing it and also like having conversations like with the people that I got to be in this room of. And it's one of those funny things that when you have conversations with the right people who see you for who you are, and they start to realize like what you're capable of and like how you see the world and just like all the things you have to offer, and you allow them to also see your brilliance, they start to also want to share your brilliance with other people. And you know, I was 24 years old and I was terrified of like what I was going to do. Like my parents were like, you dropped out of university in your last year. Like I decided to like go into entrepreneurship full time without knowing if it was even possible. And like, you know, these conversations that we have with immigrant parents where like, you know, what are you going to do and how are you going to make money? My dad was like, you're going to make money as a photographer? What are you doing? And that year, like my first full-time year, like trying to do this, because of people I had conversations with who started recommending me to other people, who started having other conversations with other people, I made 6 figures in revenue. I got to reinvest into like my work. I got to reinvest into like my field and like equipment and training. And I literally did that only because a person recommended me to someone else, who saw me in another room, who recommended me to someone else. And like, I used to go to these events and people was like, I see you everywhere. Like, who are you? Where did you come from? But it was like I started going to these places, and every time I showed up, I was like, "Hi, I'm Jenny. I don't know you, but you know, like these are the things I care about. Tell me about you." And so, like, truly, like I ended up in this industry, and being able to do this because I then like built this little network, and then I was like, well, you know what I care about? I really care about gender equity. And I really care about how many times I'm also now showing up in these rooms and no one either looks like me or no one's having the conversations I wish they were having. Or the ones that are having these conversations, to be quite honest, are Black women and South Asian women are having these conversations, and like other folks with more privilege are not having these conversations. And like we need to be also doing more and showing up. And so the more I did that, like the more my network also began to expand with people who cared about the same things, who were values aligned, and like who could then say, you know what, like we love your values and I know what you do. Like come be in these spaces, like come be a part of like telling our stories. And so like it's really cool to see like where that's come, because that was like 6-7 years ago. And I came into the city like literally knowing no one. I had been like away from Toronto for like 6 years, and I grew up in Mississauga. Like I didn't know anyone here. And now like I walk down the street or I go to an event and I know I'm gonna like see like 3 or 4 people that I've like just met over the years. So yeah, I think it's really powerful, and I think it's really beautiful to be able to build when you do it. And sometimes in the beginning, it's hard. Like if you don't have a network, and if you don't know where to find your network, and if the people in your network don't feel like the right kind of people,
or they're gatekeeping,
or they're not actually helping you or saying your name in the rooms that you're supposed to be in, or you know you deserve to be in, it's so hard. Like I'm talking about this with such rose-tinted glasses because I feel like I'm on the other side of like what took a decade to get to. But it's also something that I think like when you have like the community like part of networking and like having a network, it's like so beautiful to be a part of.
Yeah, I think what I really hear a lot is like from the conversation, what I take away is to show up as your authentic self. And networking, building that community is exhaustive. There will be times when you come out of an event and you're like, that was tough. And you don't want to show up, but at the same time, continuing to show up, being your authentic self and just being amazing the way you are, I think that is what then helps build that community. I just want to share something that I recently heard at an event and I was blown away by it, was about how this immigrant had just come into the country. She was a young woman. She didn't get a job in her field, and she started working at a hotel as a host. And before like the day before, she used to go through like the guest list and just see who was supposed to come the next day, do like her research. And then the next day, if anybody asked her what you were doing, like she really knew who she had to like speak with in that sense. And from there, she was able to get a job for herself. And I feel like as in this time, as we build our own communities and our networks, it's about being creative in that way to see, how do you build those communities? So do you have any advice on how can our listeners build that community in a more creative way? Because I think events and all these spaces are very nerve-wracking. They're built to push you to network. But there are so many other ways to build your network.
I feel like there's 2 pieces of advice that I would give. Number 1, I know just for like events, like even like events that I won't even attend, if it's an event that is in alignment with where I want to be or like the kind of people I want to connect with, I would go and follow and connect all the people that mentioned the event the day after. So like if it's like an event that I like tickets were too expensive, but people like the event host usually like reshares a bunch of stories, then I'll be like, oh, like you were there, like great, like nice to meet you. I'll like try to connect that way, like from like a digital kind of network thing. But the other thing I would say is like truly like just the intentionality behind like your energy when you go to show up for them. I met one person who, I'm not even kidding, was like someone who ended up not only being someone who was my client, but who like opened doors for me and gave me like access to so many people within her network. And the first time we met, we never spoke. She just said, I saw you in the room and you were just smiling. Everywhere you went, you had your camera and you just beamed good energy. And so she connected with me the next time we saw, and she was like, I saw you at that event, and I like couldn't stop noticing how like just happy you were. And I think it just made me realize like it's not, there was that phrase like, you know, people don't remember what you say, but they remember how you make them feel.
Yeah.
And so if you're if you're scared of networking, you're scared of going into a place like, and you feel that forcedness, you also aren't going to radiate your light. Right? Like if, and again, that's hard when you're maybe networking in an industry that isn't made for you or like feel comfortable where you can do that. But I think like that's why, you know, Fora being the space that it is, also being a space where it gives you access to a network of other people going through those same uncomfortable experiences as a young person. Is so incredible, because at least then your network of mentors and of peers are also like navigating those same things and there to support you. And they also are still just as important in your network as like the people in the actual career industry you're in. And then the other great piece of advice that I received was like, your peers are also your network. And like, you know, who you build like when you're, you know, 18 to 24, like who you're like in school with, who you're like kikiing with, like while you're struggling, like those are the people who, you know, in 10 years will start to be in like middle management, going up to upper management, like entering really into their careers, and like continue to be the people who like will remember you and say your names in those places. So yeah, those are the things that I think.
Yeah, those are great. For me, honestly, I don't mean to be like Nike, but honestly, just do it. Like, like literally.
Real.
Honestly, I often feel a very heightened sense of imposter syndrome. So I literally fake it until I can make it. I cold call a lot, so I send a lot of emails. 99.9% of them don't get answered, but I sent them anyways. And that's just somebody that I check off the list. And you know what? This, like, our circles are so small that I might end up meeting them anyways. And I just be like, hey, I sent you an email. I don't know if you got it, but like, I feel like the biggest thing or the biggest about networking is just the starting part. Because of course with connections, it's the rejection part kind of stings, but I feel like honestly, in my mind, I'm just like, the worst thing somebody can say is no. The worst thing somebody can do is not respond. And then you pick up your pieces and you move on. Like, I think, like Jenny, I don't fixate too much on, okay, who you know, it's who you, like, I feel like at the end of the day, all of the places that I've been, all of the people that I know, we've kind of gravitated towards each other. There's some people that I met now that I've known forever, but the timing was just never right. When it was, we met and we were like, oh, I've known you forever, girl. Yeah. So like, I think for me, the initial part of networking and trying to create community is the anxiety part. But once you get over that hurdle, don't let anybody tell you when you're ready. Just do it. Like you're never ready. Like you're never prepared to do something. You kind of just slip and fall, and then you so happen to be landing. I don't like to focus too much on my feelings, because sometimes they're just indicative of a bigger issue, a bigger sense of unbelonging that's maybe not mine. And so I try my very best to, if this is a space that I'm interested in, it aligns with my values, I like it, I like the people that are here, I see myself doing what they're doing. I feel like they're adding value towards the community beyond just themselves. Like I'm very much a beyond just yourself type of type of person. And if I see that in a space, in an event, in a lawyer, in a law firm, that's where I want to be. And I don't care if you don't want me to be there. Like I will be there. And if it aligns, it works out. And if not, move on.
And I think like, you know, we're talking about the power of a network, but the reality is like who you know gets you into rooms, right? Like who you know is like gets you money. Who you know gets you access. Who you know like allows your voice to be heard as loud as like they have the access to give to you. And so like when we're thinking about also like why it's so important and you know why there's all this pressure to network, like there's all the like traditional like methods of networking that have been gatekept by privilege. And then there's all the other ways that I think like young people, racialized people, like people who don't have the access are learning how to do it now and have more access than they once did. It was like the day that I learned that frats are actually like a paid entrance into job opportunities. I was like, what do you mean? This is paid access into a privileged network. And all these people just get that? Like, and everyone else is out here struggling, and there's entire like systems built and created for other like privileged folks to have access into networks that other folks simply don't. So if you don't have that kind of access, I think like the power of finding your way into networks and into communities and into people that do have that access, I think is also more important than anything else, because like, I don't know, I think someone told me like no one else is going to cheer for you as loud as you will cheer for yourself. So like the fact that you just do it and you just say hello, like, hi, I'm just going to send these emails, like you have to.
Yeah. I think sometimes, yes, who determines your network, or your net worth. But oftentimes I'm very like radical in my thinking too. Oftentimes, like Jenny said, there are certain people that don't have, like if I was speaking to people in my community, yes, that's something that I would tell them, but I would very much tell them that you can also create your own path. You can also create a system that gets you to some sort of recognition in order to ensure that other people that look like you it doesn't have to take them twice as long. I think, yes, and honestly, when we say who determines your net worth, we're just basically saying the more white people you know, the better you are, the better off you are, the more white speaking you are, the more the closer you are to whiteness, the more money you're gonna make, to be quite honest. And I know this just because of the spaces that I occupy. And I hear that, but I'm very wary of like believing that intrinsically, because I know not a lot of people that look like me get to this space. So what does that mean for them? Like, what does that mean for people that are trying to break out of poverty or break out of systems that were meant and created to keep them at a certain place? And so I think, as much as we say that, as much as we believe it, I think it's also important to tell people, listen, there is nobody that's going to stop you from getting to where you want to go to, regardless of what your network looks like. It's a social change. It's a social currency that some people have and some people don't, but it's not the end all be all. I think that's important. And I think, like when we're talking about like building community and networking and trying to, in a sense, I feel like we're talking about people who can and can't make it. I think sometimes, it's important for us to recognize that part too, to be very honest to ourselves about like how I'm a Black Muslim woman, but I also know that I occupy certain levels of privilege. And it's really important for me to check myself and to understand that, like, this is indigenous territory. Like, it's cute that I occupy certain spaces, but who doesn't get to occupy this same space because of me? Like, I like to think about that a lot. I like to think about like the opposite of what is true, the opposite of what I'm being told all the time is what I need to do in order to be quote unquote successful, whatever that looks like. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I love the part about like paving your own way. It's not, so yeah, like having these networks is very necessary. But I also, as you were saying, Suliya, I also feel like the networks that we build while we go through school, through university, like the connections and the friendships that we build, those are also valuable networks to have. People who actually believe in us and, like are there to support us. And for the last question, as we move towards the end, we're all part of Fora Network for Change, right? So I just want to ask you both to share moments and memories from Fora Network for Change that you really value and are special to you.
So I was a part of the Fora Network before I ever worked for the Fora Network. I knew people who had been a part of the Rise on Boards program. I had spoken to some of the young directors. I had watched some of the team like build and do what they were doing in like the transitions. I remember being at like the leadership forum, I think in 2021, and just being like, there's cool work being done here. And there's cool people here. And like, I don't understand everything that's happening here because I'm not in governance. Let's say, for example, like, you know, I'm a creative, like I'm in a very different world. But when people like are, again, like passionate about what they're doing and they care about what they're doing and they're like surrounded by other people who are like helping them along the way, you can feel that energy in a room. And so I think like being at one of Fora's like leadership forums, and then like since then actually being a part of like what the work is that Fora is doing, and being on the other side of that, I think it's been really, really cool, like year after year, to see like the networks and the connections that then like spur off into other things. You know, I got to see like the 2022 Global Summit and like all the connections that were formed over a week-long like Global Summit period. And then afterwards on like LinkedIn, you see like, you know, different delegations like in different parts of the world, like connecting with each other and just like sharing on LinkedIn, like, oh yeah, like met up with this person like in Milan, like talking about this thing and policy issue. So when you start to see again, like those like mini networks that begin to get created from those like real connections, I think that's been like one of my favorite things to witness, like as a part of the Fora community. And also the way like the work that Fora is doing, and there's so many different streams that Fora's participants work in, right? There's not just one stream. It's in governance, it's in, you know, gender-based violence, it's in climate change, it's in all of these different streams that you have all these participants working in. And so when you see them all come together and collaborate, and then also like go off and do their own thing, and then come back together and re-collaborate and say like, what does it look like in this field? And what does it look like in that field? I feel like those are the moments that have like lit me up to witness.
I think for me, just the intentionality of it, like just being in a space with like-minded people that don't look the same as me, that occupy so many different jobs and are in different sectors, was amazing. And I also loved the leadership forum. I felt like that was like right before I went into law school, and I thought I wanted to do more policy and government work. And so I absolutely loved the leadership forum. I thought, you know, like the type of speakers that were like present were intentionally picked, and I appreciated that. And then, like Jenny said, I'm very much, yes, I live in Canada and I'm here and I work in Toronto, but I'm very much interested in like international politics, and just seeing that delegation and seeing all of these participants from different parts of the world was absolutely amazing for me. I'm always on LinkedIn and I always see like different people saying, oh, I joined Fora during this time, and messaging each other and connecting in different parts of the world. I think that's important. And I think, you know, sometimes we get so gobbled up on just like local politics, but we don't understand how the little things make up the big. And I think that's important. And that's something that I think about just in terms of my work. And I appreciated that. And I think, you know, like Jenny said, like-minded people gravitating towards each other. And guess what? You have a network. So I think we don't realize like we're in this program, but I've met so many amazing people and off of just vibes. And it's grown to something so much better and bigger. And I think that's the most important part.
Thank you.
Meeting people off of vibes is honestly, I love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much to the both of you for this amazing conversation. I think there's so many takebacks that I'm taking with me. I love that we talked about, like, networks are important. We've established that fact. But at the same time, it's about like timing. It's about, I'm also happy to hear, like, I'm not happy, but I'm like satisfied to hear that, Jenny, you still feel that anxiety or that doubt sometimes to like walk up to a new person. And it's just about like fighting that doubt, being your authentic self. And then a connection might work right now, or it might just come back later to you. So yeah, thank you so very much to the both of you for being here with us today. Thank you for listening in. Stay tuned, follow us, and have a great evening.